But first, the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, declaring, and I quote, "The Constitution does not confer a right to abortion." It doesn't rule abortion unconstitutional. Instead, regulations, quote, leaving the regulations, quote, to the people and their elected representatives. About half of the 50 states are now expected to ban abortion in almost every circumstance, beginning with Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, North and South Dakota, and Utah. Bans there went into effect immediately. 5 other states, Wyoming, Mississippi, Idaho, Tennessee, and Texas, will join them inside a month. Clarence Thomas, one of 5 justices who voted to overturn Roe, is urging the court to also reconsider 3 other rulings that upheld contraceptives, same-sex relationships, and same-sex marriage. Today's action, to no one's surprise, sparked protests and also celebration outside the court and across the country. I want to bring in 3 people who know how we got to this point and where we might be going from here. Jeff Lewis is an attorney and the founder of Jeff Lewis Law. Michael Higginbotham is a professor of constitutional law at the University of Baltimore. And Kimberly Mutcherson is the co-dean and professor of law at Rutgers University. Thank you all for being here. Michael, I want to start with you. When it comes to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, I don't think a lot of people realize that these sort of precedents can actually change. So for people unhappy about it, should they be hopeful that it could change again? And for people who are happy today, should they be worried that it could actually go back to the way it was?
Well, they should be worried that the decision was made today. People should be happy that it can change because it changed today. This was significant in that it was the first time the Supreme Court has ever taken an individual right away. That has been in existence for 50 years. So with that significance, certainly it could change in the future, depending upon the makeup of the court.
And Jeff, to be fair, so many of the headlines today that I've read seemed like they've been inaccurate, basically just saying abortion banned in the United States. But Jeff, really what it does is it sends it back to the states. Is that right?
Well, yes and no. There's 26 states where it's going to be effectively illegal to have an abortion. But if you live in one of those 26 states and you're a working class person to try to make a long drive and pay your gas bill and everything else, you may be practically precluded from driving to another state to get an abortion.
Kimberly, I want to ask you something that caught my eye today. I mean, it was a statement from Merrick Garland, of course, Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court, now the Attorney General of the United States. He put out a statement after the ruling, and I'm going to read it to you. It said, "The Supreme Court has eliminated an established right that has been an essential component of women's liberty for half a century. The Justice Department strongly disagrees with the court's decision. The FDA has approved the use of the medication mifepristone. States may not ban that medicine based on disagreement with the FDA's expert judgment about its safety and efficacy." That drug, by the way, can end a pregnancy that is less than 10 weeks along. But I want to ask you more broadly, Kimberly, about the Attorney General's response. Is it appropriate for him as Attorney General to be calling out the Supreme Court that way?
Absolutely. And certainly in this set of circumstances where we've already heard a lot of state legislators talking about ways that they want to make it more difficult, if not impossible, for women to have access to medication abortion. And the pills that are used for medication abortion are safe. They have been approved by the FDA. And the idea that individual states would put women in a position where they couldn't have access to them or try to criminalize them for getting access to those pills elsewhere is deeply problematic. And it was good for Merrick Garland to step in.
Michael, what was the problem with the Roe v. Wade decision? I've even heard some legal experts who think abortion should always be available say that Roe was really a problematic decision from the beginning. Can you explain that?
Well, some people say it was problematic because it had the trimester approach. It basically said that in the first trimester, you could not prohibit abortion. And in the second trimester and the third trimester, you could regulate it and prohibit it. A lot of people had a problem with that trimester approach. They said it wasn't really based in any science or any law. But if you look at it, the main thing about Roe was that it protected a woman's right to choose. It gave substantive constitutional protection for that right. And if you look at the decision today, that's the problem with the decision. It took that right away. It left regulation of abortion to the states and basically said there's no substantive protection, constitutional protection for abortion. So states can now regulate as they choose, subject to the lowest standard of review. And that's very problematic because most states can satisfy that standard with any type of regulation they want.
Jeff, let me ask you this. I found this interesting today. So many companies, most notably Chase Bank, have said that they will actually cover travel expenses for employees who need to travel to other states to get abortions that will be challenged by this decision. How do you see that playing out? Will there be lawsuits? I mean, could states pass laws that would make that illegal, or do you think that will work out okay?
It's not going to work out okay. Not only could they pass new laws, but think about the Texas bounty law that lets somebody in Texas sue someone for assisting in an abortion. Right now, under Texas's bounty law, Chase could be sued by someone in Texas under the bounty law. And pretty soon you'll see criminal statutes passed in these red states, making it a criminal act to assist a person get an abortion.
And Jeff, one thing that I thought about when I heard this today was privacy. I mean, does a woman really want to tell their company and their employer and their boss if they are, interested in doing this? I mean, is that something you want to discuss in the workplace?
Probably not. And think about this. The police are going to have expanded search and seizure powers under this ruling in terms of what police can legitimately ask about. And police will be able to go to an employer and ask difficult questions. So I'm not sure any employee is going to want to share news with their employer.
And Kimberly, in terms of what comes next, do you think it's really possible that same-sex marriage could be overturned next?
With this court, I think a lot of things are possible. I think that the way that that Alito wrote the majority opinion was working very hard to cabin this decision just to abortion. And then we saw the same thing. And then we saw Justice Thomas jump in and say, but actually, let's spend some time rethinking Obergefell, which is the marriage equality case. Let's rethink Lawrence versus Texas, which was a case about same-sex sex. And let's rethink Griswold versus Connecticut, which was about contraceptives. So certainly Justice Thomas is willing to relook at those issues and decide whether there is some other constitutional basis for protecting them. And if there isn't, he would kick that back to the states as well.
Michael, we saw the threat against Justice Brett Kavanaugh. I saw pictures just a little while ago on Twitter of protesters outside his home and what almost looked like an army of police outside right now. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think that they need more security? Does it make you uncomfortable to see it go to that level where you've got, I mean, obviously there's a big difference between someone putting threats in and protesters, but does it make you uncomfortable to see the protesters actually outside their homes?
Peaceful protest is a big part of our history. We have a First Amendment, which is very unique throughout the world. And I think it's important to recognize peaceful protest is a part of the American democracy and the American tradition. I also, of course, grew up in the 60s and 70s when we had assassinations occur. And I saw the flag at half-mast too often. So security is very important for any elected and appointed official. Protest in the appropriate areas, and streets and parks are appropriate. They're a tradition in our country. I have no problem with that. Peaceful protest, very appropriate on streets and parks, and sometimes that's in front of people's homes. But it's got to be peaceful. And we have to have security, top security for all of our elected and appointed officials. We don't want them in fear of their lives or in fear of their safety at all. That's the problem with January 6th, of course. And that is, we're all, looking at that today and very concerned.
Yeah, we've obviously seen that issue on both sides. Michael, it seems that regardless of how you feel today, I mean, people need to at least respect the decision, right? In the sense that, you can't go and show up at someone's house and threaten them. That's just not the way our system works.
Absolutely not. Threats are not a part of our First Amendment freedom of speech protections. True threats are a problem.
Let me ask you. Sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you, Jeff, right now the court is predominantly conservative. If justices are replaced, could we see it swing back the other way? Pretty young court now. And how long do you think that could take if that was going to happen?
Without significant reforms such as term limits or adding additional seats to rebalance the court, I think it would take quite a long time to adjust the ideological composition of this court.
And what do you think, Jeff, about adding additional seats? You mentioned that. What's your feeling on that?
I think it didn't used to be taken seriously as a proposal, but today's decision and yesterday's decision on guns may turn the voters out in November in huge numbers. And if that happens, you might see calls for impeachment of sitting justices and adding seats and serious conversations in Washington about that in a way that we've never seen before.
Kimberly, I'm curious what you think about that. Do you think they should add additional seats? I mean, obviously, Republicans will say this is just Democrats upset that they didn't get their way. Elections have consequences. Why is it fair to just add seats when you're not happy with the way something goes?
I'm not sure that adding seats is the way to go, right? I don't think we want to end up at some point with a Supreme Court that has 50 justices on it because each party keeps adding seats to the court. I think there are other ways to think about how to make the Supreme Court more of an accountable branch of our government, right? These are not people who we elect. They sit for lifetime terms. And there are people in that court who are quite young. So there are other things that I think we can and should be talking about that aren't necessarily about adding more justices to the court.
Jeff Lewis, Michael Higginbotham, and Kimberly Mutcherson, thank you so much. Obviously, historic day in our country. We thank you for coming on with us tonight to discuss it.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.